Sometimes a single year can completely rewrite a nation's destiny. For India, that year was 1991. It was a moment of crisis so intense, so profound, that it forced a change that's still shaping the country and, honestly, the world to this very day. So let's dive into how this incredible moment unfolded.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at how India got itself right to the edge of a cliff. Then, we'll see the wild new direction the country was forced to take. After that, we'll explore the massive ripple effects of those reforms. And finally, we'll get into the big questions that this moment in history still makes us ask today.
So let's set the scene. It's 1991, and India is basically staring into an economic abyss. And this wasn't some slow-moving problem. This was a sudden, terrifying, full-blown national emergency. So what on earth was going on?
Okay, so the heart of the problem was something called a balance of payments crisis. I know, it sounds super technical, right? But let's break it down. Just think about your own bank account. A balance of payments crisis is basically like a whole country realizing it's about to run out of money to pay for essentials. We're talking things like fuel, or to make its loan payments. The nation's bank account with the rest of the world was about to go into a massive, unfixable overdraft.
And this wasn't just one single thing going wrong. Nope, it was the perfect storm. The country's supply of foreign money, like US dollars, was just vanishing. At the exact same time, these huge international loan payments were all due. It meant India was literally days away from not being able to pay for the basic stuff that keeps a country running. And just to give you an idea of how urgent this was, get this. India had less than 3 weeks' worth of money left to pay for its imports. Let that sink in. Less than 21 days before the tank was completely empty. We're talking about a country on the verge of a catastrophic default. Well, a crisis like this forces a choice. You either collapse or you make some radical, probably pretty painful changes. India chose change, and it pulled itself back from the brink in a way that, frankly, almost nobody saw coming. With its back completely against the wall, India had to go ask for help from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. But here's the thing, that help wasn't free. It came with some major strings attached. India had to agree to a massive pivot, a fundamental shift away from its closed-off, state-controlled economy toward a much more open, liberalized, market-driven one. And this is so crucial. This wasn't just one little policy tweak. It was a whole blueprint for change. Step 1, stabilization measures, right away, just to stop the bleeding. Then came the deep, structural stuff, getting rid of the mountain of government permits businesses needed, opening the doors to global trade, and completely overhauling the banking and finance system. So India took the tough medicine, but what happened next? This is where the story gets really transformative. Let's look at the incredible ripple effects of these decisions because they basically forged a whole new economic identity for the nation. The most obvious impact, the one you could see right away, was on economic growth. The reforms put India on a totally different track. The country's growth trajectory shot upwards, way higher than it had been for decades. The whole pace of the economy just accelerated like crazy.
But it was so much more than just numbers on a chart. The entire character, the personality of the Indian economy started to change. The private sector was just unleashed. It became incredibly dynamic. India got plugged into global trade and investment in a way it had never been before, and that completely changed its place in the world economy. But history is never a closed book, right? The legacy of 1991 isn't just a simple success story. It's actually a series of really complex questions that people in India and all around the world are still debating.
And that leads to the first big one. Was this all only possible because of the crisis? Would India have ever made such deep, radical changes if its back wasn't against the wall? It's that classic question of whether real change comes from a grand vision or just pure necessity. And of course, a change this massive is never felt the same way by everybody. This new economic era created unbelievable opportunities, for sure, but it also created new risks. So a huge part of understanding 1991 is asking, who really won? Who benefited the most? And which parts of this huge, diverse country felt the biggest shifts? And finally, this brings us to today. India's journey is this incredible, powerful case study. As other growing economies face their own financial crises, what can they learn from what India went through back in 1991? It's a question that makes this piece of history so incredibly relevant, leaving us all to think about that delicate dance between crisis, reform, and the making of a nation's future.